Today's episode is presented by Wonderlust Video and Wedditor. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn, and today I'm actually recording this episode with a good friend of mine, Paige Hulse. She's an attorney. She's been on the podcast, but it's been a few years. She is an attorney for creative entrepreneurs, and we dig deep into some of the things that we should be thinking about as wedding filmmakers when it comes to our contracts and how to keep ourselves safe and what to do when people rip off our work. A lot of things about just keeping ourselves safe, making sure that our contracts are up to date, and making sure that they are bulletproof when it comes to our brand and that we are doing the right thing. So she is a wealth of knowledge. She's actually somebody that, you hear the word attorney, you think they might be stiff, they might be hard to listen to. She is the opposite of that. She's very relatable, and we wanted this episode to come out and make sure that you had the tools that you need. But before we get into the episode, I wanted to also let you know of something new that Nick and I are doing with How to Film Weddings, and that is our brand new mentorship portion of our site at howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. We are making available a small amount of spots per month to do a one-on-one call with Nick or myself. We can dig into your brand. We can look at your website. We can talk about the things that you need for your business today. And so it's a great opportunity to really amp up the speed of your business. And if you're interested in learning from us or learning more about what we're doing with our mentorships, we have limited spots, and we are doing these in single, one-off mentorships, or you can buy them in 3-packs, things like that. So we can really set a plan together with you personally to meet you right where you are with your business. And so again, if you're in need of a personal mentor and you learn from How to Film Weddings and you love what we teach, why not hop on a real Zoom call with us so we can talk to you about your specific situation? We know that we can help you fast forward your business months or even years with a couple of conversations. So head over to howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship to check that out. And without further ado, here is my episode with Paige Hulse. All right, well, welcome the one and only Paige Hulse, my friend and also my attorney, to the How to Film Weddings podcast. It's been a while. Say hello. How are you doing, Paige? Introduce yourself. Who are you? What's good? All the questions all at once.
Thank you, John, for having me again. It has been a while. Like I said, my name is Paige Hulse. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for creative entrepreneurs for 7 years as of last week. So I have my law firm, Paige Hulse Law, and work with wedding professionals and creative entrepreneurs across the globe.
And when it comes to attorneys, you're the coolest attorney I know. I'm just going to be honest.
I'm not a regular attorney.
You're not a regular. And what drew you to be doing what you're doing instead of like the corporate world? I mean, you work with a lot of creative entrepreneurs all over the planet. You have all kinds of clients everywhere, but what kind of drew you this way? Why do you care about us?
It's a great question. The short story to that is that I actually used to be an oil and gas litigator. So I was drafting and then litigating 100 plus page contracts. It was extremely stressful. I was in the courtroom within a week of passing the bar. I needed a creative outlet, and I just kind of I just picked up calligraphy literally as a way to decompress, a healthy way to decompress after being in court all day. Accidentally turned it into a business and then followed those same breadcrumbs that so many of us follow of asking, is this a company? Is it not? Do I need an EIN? Do I not? My contract's awful. The seating chart was hung and crashed last week, and the wedding planner's trying to come after me for it, and found myself squarely in the position of a lot of the questions that I deal with now. From a larger perspective, I was raised by a family of entrepreneurs, and without realizing it at the time, I think growing up watching, my dad started his company with $200 knocking on investors' doors, and one person recognized gumption and literally bet on him, and that was that. So I was raised in that environment, and I was just drawn to it without realizing it, and it stuck with me.
Yeah. I came across you about 7 or 8 years ago, I think so now. You were, I think, speaking at I don't know, an event that I was at or something, or where, do you remember where
I actually I think I remember who connected us, but you had like a luncheon type networking group. And I think that you actually, I don't know if I've ever actually said this, but I think you were the first person that had me speak, like within a month of starting my business.
Yeah,
And I
but
was like, I'm someone.
well, hey, that's me taking risks on people. Here we are again.
Rolled the dice, and
Yeah,
here we are.
I'm the guy that made the $200 investment into your
Yeah.
business, so to speak.
No, I'm
No,
not kidding at all. I think it was like at the chalkboard, you were hosting like lunch, and that's where I got to meet all sorts of wedding professionals across Tulsa.
yeah, I feel like I had seen a few, or I mean, obviously, there was something that was like, oh, she's got her stuff together, she's helping us, and that kind of started a friendship, which led into us even sharing an office for a couple of years. Shout out to Suite D3 in South Tulsa or Midtown Tulsa.
I think we should just address the elephant in the room. You were my landlord. You somehow finagled your way into making your own lawyer, your lessee, which is an interesting methodology that only John Bunn would pursue. But
That's incredible. I sublessied you
Yeah.
to pay me a few $100s a month to have an office space, and we had a good time. We realized we both loved listening to Taylor Swift. We were both entrepreneurial and have kind of stayed around each other throughout the journey of, that was when How to Film Weddings really was getting going. And I had so many questions about, like, you looked at my first contract and you were like, where'd you find this? And I was like, that's exactly what I did. I found it. Okay. I found this. And you helped me kind of rewrite it, get it in order, and help me update it from time to time. And tell me a little bit, like, you started the business, you got going. Soon thereafter, you had templates galore. You had all kinds of things out there. What is the story of how that kind of, just briefly, so people know how that got going?
Yeah, because now 7 years later, I tell the story, and it's like you throw a rock and you hit a lawyer with a contract template shop. At the time, I was one of like 2 or 3 people that had a template shop. It was not something I wanted to do at all. I think you were one of the people that encouraged me to pursue it anyways. And there's that whole other conversation about just being a serial entrepreneur, but it was an entrepreneurial solution to a need. Attorneys can't draft contracts across state lines or international lines without an attorney licensed in that jurisdiction. So that was issue number 1. Issue number 2, I have yet to meet a creative entrepreneur or startup that wants to, can, or should pay me an hourly rate to draft a contract, which actually takes about 12 to 15 hours per agreement. Multiply that times my hourly rate, you're looking at a really
$100 or so dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. At least 1 month rent to John Bunn.
Yes.
And no one wants to pay that.
Don't be late. Don't be late.
Yeah, less the late fees. And so that's where the realities it's a really bad joke I need to stop saying, but I'm probably never going to stop. But I wear my legal hat, but I wear my business hat as well. And I know legally what a company needs, but as a business owner myself, like, we have a whole list of needs. Let's prioritize them and be strategic about them, and handle them in the order they need to be handled. And providing contract templates was a way for me to take those contracts that I wrote for people like you, redacted our names from the agreement, and in my own contracts for my business, redacted our names from the agreement, and could just basically share my desktop with everybody. And so yeah, that's how it was, again, an entrepreneurial solution to a need. And what's so funny telling this story now is, again, I think every single attorney that works in the creative space, has a contract template shop. At the time, I remember the conversations that people will never know about that I had with attorneys, like my legal colleagues who were like, "Are you actually practicing law? Like, is this actually, are you working with people who actually make money, or is everybody just trying to nickel and dime and bootstrap it?" And truly, to this day, a lot of attorneys still don't know what creative law is. And it is just a matter of literally getting, like, being in the trenches and like bootstrapping it and being the boots on the ground with my clients and understanding the nuances, and also being like, jokes aside, and don't let this go to your head, but letting clients, I know, careful, but letting clients like you educate me on the lessons that every single one of your clients and every single one of your, any rocky client relationship that you might have. I can write an ironclad contract, but I can't pretend like I know every single element of what goes into shooting a wedding. So just taking that feedback from my clients and continuing to refine the product. And
Yeah.
that's been the journey
Yeah.
for 7 years.
Yeah, and we became good friends and have stayed in touch. And there's, you do all of our work for How to Film Weddings and have written all of our contracts for all the things. And I just remember that feeling the first time that a bride contacted me and said, "I want to cancel my wedding. I still owe you $14,000. The wedding's in 30 days, and I want my money back as well." And I went and looked at my contract, and I was like, "Oh no, I've got nothing in here that says," and this was before you. And I remember just the sting of writing the $17,000 check for what that time was video and photo over like a 3-day. It's like the biggest package we'd ever sold. The groom wasn't living a life that he should have been living. The bride found out, and she, who also was an attorney, was like, "Hey, I want my $17,000 back." So I had to go borrow money that I didn't have to pay this person back. And I was expecting money. She had only paid, I think, $4,000 or $5,000 at that point, but the money I was expecting that month, I didn't get. And I was just like, this is a problem. I've been doing this for a long time, and my contract isn't solid. And I remember coming to you and just being like, "Is there anything I can do?" And it's like, "No, not really. You have a bad contract." And it's like, "Well, let's fix this so it never happens again." And that those kinds of conversations turned into more contracts and different things. But then I remember the feeling whenever I think it was 2020, I had a client. We'll call her Karen. Just kidding. I had a client that, man, I don't know if you remember working with me on that one, but it got real rough. And like, luckily we had a contract in place, and I had you in place to kind of help me make sure that I wasn't gonna, and it saved me tens of thousands of dollars of litigation fees and like all the things. And I was able to get out of it amicably. That's a word you guys use a lot, which just means like everybody's okay. Like, yep. Thank you for the clapping if you're not watching online. But point being is, like, it's very important what you do. And we wanted you to be on today because I think especially in 2024 and beyond, as wedding filmmaking is now as popular as it's ever been, people want content. People are expecting content. There's just a lot of things going on in the world where if you don't have a solid contract, or you don't have, things in place to protect yourself, you could really shut down your business, like get your business shut down. Or I remember at a wedding I did probably 3 or 4 years ago, one of my lights on a light stand got knocked over at Southern Hills Country Club, and it landed on a table, and it knocked a candle over that caught something on fire just very briefly, just like a real quick flame that I turned out. But some kid like tripped over it, even though I had like a sandbag and even though I had tape on it and stuff. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, this was like a $250,000 wedding. I could have this would have been my fault. Like, what do I, and just like, there's so many different little nuances, like you said, in a wedding filmmaker's business, a wedding photographer, a creative's business, that like, if we're not thinking through things, we could really cause some problems. So there's a lot of people listening that maybe have used, like some kind of free templates or don't have anything. I guess my first question to you is like, if you're a wedding filmmaker in 2024, what just initial advice would you give to us regarding setting up our contracts, making sure that they're good? And then in a sec, we can get into like some of the nuanced IP things or things like that. But just general advice that you're seeing.
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to say I know that legal's not the side of business that anybody wants to, like, this isn't the fun stuff. I'm fully aware of that.
You make it fun.
Well, thank you for that, John. I'm fully aware of that. I know, but this is where like truly taking 15 minutes after this call and just doing a word search of some of the things that I can tell people afterwards can very truly save thousands and thousands of dollars. And this isn't a message of like, you have to be ready to be sued at any time either. It's just a matter of like, let's invest the short amount of time right now to make sure that we have that strong foundation so that you can actually take that business to a new place. I think that we've kind of, I don't know if we've really talked about this or if I just assume that you agree with me, but
sure.
Yeah, not to set you up with a leading question. Business has changed, like truly business has changed. Our clients have changed, or my clients have changed since 2020. Clients' eyes have been open to the fact that weddings can get canceled. They can get rescheduled. Now, most people don't have to explain to their clients what like force majeure means. Don't say those words. Don't say those words. It's like making my eye twitch. The conversations that my clients are having with their clients now are vastly different than they were pre-2020. And so as it stands right now, making sure that you have that language in your like one thing I would just briefly point out to people is do a word search and make sure you have the word non-transferable in your like make sure it pops up somewhere in your payment language so that we can at least capture the content of the agreement to what we're talking about right now, meaning somebody can't say, well, I decided I'm going to cancel this wedding, but you don't have the word non-transferable in your contract. And so going back to like the bride you're talking about, I might want you to just shoot a brand shoot for me, and I'll just transfer that initial payment to the brand shoot or something like that. That we don't want to even entertain those types of scenarios from coming up. And I am seeing those occur quite a bit. So that's one quick word search that somebody can do right now just to provide a stopgap.
That's good. Yeah. And man, you said those two words, you said the F word, which I'm going to have to get the editor to bleep it out, the force majeure. If you don't know what that is, you started your business after 2020. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
But man, those two words, just adding those words, adding the word pandemic into my contract was big. But I see a lot of people get their business going and they're kind of winging it with things, and they're like, I'll get to that later. For somebody that doesn't have money, like, contract templates and different things can cost money, or like hiring an attorney at the hourly rate, like you're talking about, hundreds of dollars per hour, dozens of hours of time can get really expensive. What steps would you encourage somebody that's in their first couple of years that maybe has been, a lot of these places have little built-in templates and things like that. Is there any advice that you would have to people if they were your client? Again, the people listening are not your client, but anything that would come to mind on like for them to make sure with their current, like if they don't even have a contract set up, or if they're in that stage of their business?
Yes. So first of all, every single judge that I've been in front of since 2020, I didn't mean to come here and just talk about 2020, but every judge that I've been in front of since then have said the exact same thing to every single client. And that is, you're a business owner. Even if it's a gray area, the dispute's a gray area, they say to my clients, you're the business owner. you had a burden of it's your responsibility to educate your clients on some level. So if you're asking your client to pay you, a judge is going to look at you with a more critical lens, because especially for videographers, how many times in somebody's life are they hiring a videographer? Probably not that often, probably once, and maybe, every so often for like a brand shoot afterwards, if they're, if they have a business. So that all goes back to when I completely understand that, and I'm in startup phase myself right now. I understand exactly what it means to not have the capital to make the investments you want to make. Starting with one of the free contracts perhaps is better than nothing, but I would recommend that somebody at least go and like read through some of the article. I know that's not fun, but go through and read some of the articles we've put out, because I provide enough free language to intentionally correct a lot of those contracts that we see, because those contracts are free for a reason. They're free for a very, very specific reason. And the best advice I can give somebody who is perhaps using one of those built-in contracts is at least go in and at least make sure that you have set yourself up where you're playing a game of chess, not checkers. What I mean by that is make sure that you at least have your payments and your cancellation provision. Like, you've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb. You know exactly what you're charging for, when you're charging it, and why you're charging it. So that if you had to go in front of a judge, or if you had to, if you were fighting a dispute and your attorney is arguing on your behalf, I can sit there and say, well, he required that 30% or 40% initial payment because he has staff, he has overhead, and sure, he doesn't do any work until the event occurs. But in order to operate the business, for the business to even be suitable enough to perform on the day of the event, he has to make investments to keep the business running. So we as lawyers have to be able to provide substance to that argument. So it can't be arbitrary. I've never seen one of those. And I look at them every day. So as of today, I still have not seen any of those free contracts that actually have built this out correctly. The same thing, I would argue, even more important, goes to the cancellation and termination section. If you all of a sudden have somebody call you up, and this happened to a client a couple weeks ago. She's been in business for 14 years. She has a fantastic reputation. I mean, to be in business 14 years, you have to. She had her first major client dispute pop up. And the client was a lawyer and took advantage, or the client's fiance was a lawyer, took advantage of her because her contract had it set up so that she didn't have a limitation of liability provision in the contract. She didn't have an indemnification provision in the contract. Those are two word searches to run in your agreement if you're listening. And then she did not premeditate that termination clause. So what I mean by that is she just said the parties can only cancel by writing or by written notice. The clients are bound to all payments. Like, I think that was the end of the sentence. The clients are bound to all payments. That makes no, like, I didn't know how to argue that. It's like, are they bound to payments paid? Are they bound to future payments? And so what ended up happening in that case is the client came back to her and said, we not only want a full refund, but we want you to cover the cost of the other vendors that we are having to fire because of your actions. There's a reason why they were firing her, but because of your actions that are forcing our hand in this event. So we were arguing over a $15,000 contract, but actually arguing over a $35,000 dispute. That's the type of scenario that can be avoided if you just set out milestones in your contract regarding cancellations and terminations. So now you can tell me to stop talking.
No, that's great. I fell asleep once, but other than that, it was great.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm kidding. I have to say I'm kidding, but I am actually kidding. So I recently, within the last year, so rewinding back to 2020, 2021 area, I had somebody cancel on me, and you helped me. It was during the pandemic and different stuff, and it was like a lot of back and forth, but it ended up saving me a lot of money. And like, I could stand strong on my contract that they were like, you don't have the word pandemic in your contract, so we want out because we're moving this because it's COVID. And it's like, I'm not like, I said I was going to be here. And in my contract, I even have, you were like, you can put this in your contract. I don't know if it would hold up, but go for it. I have like a line that says like, I guarantee that I'm going to pay the entire amount, even if the wedding doesn't happen. And this is a spot for you to sign. I understand that the money that is in the account for the wedding, if the wedding doesn't happen, will not be returned to me. I like all these things where they have to like initial next to all these things where I understand that John Bunn Films is blocking off this date. And part of this $25,000 booking, most of it is I can't book another wedding. I understand that, and I'm signing that, and like that's in there. And so whether that would hold up or not, it at least gives me leverage. But in the last year, I had a client that booked me and paid a 50% retainer. And in the contract, it says, I want, same, those things I just said. They came back to me about 4 months before their wedding and said, unfortunately, we have decided that your style is not what we want at our wedding. We really want someone that will do this. We're going to send you the certified letter that it says to send in your contract. We think you're awesome, but respectfully, we just wanted to let you know that like we are moving on with someone else, which that hurt my feelings, but they did not ask for any money back. And they knew in my contract that they were due, they needed to pay me the full contract, whether or not. So because I had it written out in that way and they had signed that, they came to me in a much more respectful way. They didn't ask for me not to, but after I had sent them, I said, I will send you a cancellation agreement. Thank you for letting me know this. And if you will sign this and return it by Friday, you don't need to send me a certified letter. I have this in writing. This is good. And if this is signed and canceled, I have enough time. I won't I won't make you pay the final payment. And we were able to amicably resolve that situation because that was in there and it's in writing. And I guarantee it, knowing on the backside of this after, I know that she would ask for all that money back. And that would have cost me 50% of a retainer on that. So I don't know if you have any comments on that, but where did I mess up? Or did I do it right?
Actually, no, I'm just worried that I'm just sitting here and inflating your ego. That's one of those cases where our contracts have to check certain legal boxes, but I want us to start looking at them as a negotiation tool just as much as they are like the legal seatbelt for our business, because you put yourself in a position where you were playing chess and you were able to, you had that leverage built in. And so you could make different lateral moves within the negotiation. And you also hit on something that is critically important. And again, this is something that I would, if anybody listening does not have this language in their contract, add in a requirement that somebody who wants to cancel or reschedule, that cancellation or rescheduling is only effective upon the successful execution of a rescheduling agreement or a termination agreement. Those are something that courts now look for. So it's pretty darn close. It's not law, but it's something that is, I know, at least in our county, is going to be required if we are arguing any sort of dispute. But that is a termination agreement is a document that is going to specify that even though your contract said something different, you all came to a mutual, basically like secondary understanding. It had mutual release language in there, so they can't come back 6 months from now and sue you for it. Say, we changed our mind. We actually do want the rest of it back, which I do see those types of cases happen a lot. And it just creates that very clear paper trail so that it actually shuts the door on future liability. And that's the best that you can hope for in those types of situations, because there are going to be circumstances like that where it's like no fault was actually done. Like, it sucks, but there's no actual bad blood. So let's just close that door as cleanly, as quickly as we can.
Yeah. And having those tools, I think it's just most of us don't even realize, I need a termination agreement. What is that? Those are things that, I've purchased from you, or I've purchased from template shops, or hired you to help rewrite for me. But the closure with that, as opposed to worrying that somebody that does owe me money or might sue me, or and then another thing I like in that termination agreement is there's a line just about we will all move forward and not bash each other. I think that's the
I was
legal way
literally
of
about to
saying
say
it.
that. Yeah. So any termination agreement should have a non-disparagement clause. It's a legal way of saying what you just not bashing each other. And that especially, like, the one thing you can guarantee when it comes to weddings, people are paying a lot of money for something really emotional. So we have the one thing we can premeditate is that if it goes south, like whenever emotions enter a negotiation, it gets dicey and people start, especially with social media, just start, they exercise their First Amendment rights. And so having a non-disparagement clause that just states that you aren't going to be slandering one another is going to not just be, and this is critically important, it's not just going to protect you, it's going to protect the client as well. A big problem with a lot of the free contracts, a major problem that you'll find with a lot of the free contracts that people can download or just that I see in general, are contracts are swayed too heavily to one party. And when that happens, you can be in business for 10 years and not run into an issue, and you've built your contract over time to fit your exact business specifications. If it does not protect your clients equally, it's literally considered inequitable by the court. And a contract, the definition of a contract is the meeting of minds. And if there is no meeting of the minds, if one party is being essentially taken advantage of, then the entire document can get thrown out. So it's just not that we are wanting to build contracts that are taking advantage of our clients, but any provision like that with non-disparagement, it's when discussing with clients whether or not they actually do want to sign that agreement, it's important to be vocal about the fact that it protects the client as much as it protects you.
Yeah, that's really good. And I can't explain enough how much confidence I have in my contract because I have had it's been properly built for me. And over time, every year or so, it's like, hey, Paige, I would like you to relook at this. And now that, social media exists and different things. And one of the things that I know that you've talked about before is, and I think it's a really hot topic, lots of things going on in the world today, in the wedding filmmaker world, when it comes to IP or intellectual property or the rights to the footage that you take, how it can be used, what we can do if somebody's stealing it from us or some random Instagram account has ripped our video and they've got 10 million followers and what we can. So I would like to open up the conversation just about the rights of who owns what, and does our contract need to state something about that? Or what advice would you have to us in a 2024 post-pandemic world where we are the gatekeepers to content for so many people that want that content?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, truly a very interesting time for videographers. And after we talk about this, I want to put you on the hot seat and ask about AI disputes as well, because I'm seeing that with videographers, and it's just, this year is very interesting. But when looking at your agreement, you as a videographer, the minute that you turn your camera on, you are creating common law copyrighted work. So you own you own common law rights to any of the footage that you are creating. You have to, within your contract, determine or specify whether you're retaining that ownership or whether you are assigning that ownership to your client. In that case, you are called what's called a work made for hire. I will just throw in a business note there and say that if you are assigning those intellectual property rights to your client because of all of the monetary value that there is with all of the social media content, and most people are monetizing their social media now, or a lot of people are, you should negotiate that price in if you're assigning those intellectual property rights. That's something that people should talk to you about when it comes to those negotiations. But you need to make sure that you specify who owns the intellectual property. And then you need to make sure that you specify what type of rights the client has or does not have regarding, or you have or don't have regarding use of the footage in your portfolio, use of the footage in a commercial sense for you, meaning used as marketing material for you. And when it comes to crediting rights as well, this is an interesting wrinkle in the intellectual property conversation. It's an interesting wrinkle if you're dealing with somebody who's a public figure. I'm not going to get into all of the nuances. I really could make you go to sleep and talk about like fair use laws and the deep nuances of copyright laws, but because I care, I'll spare you. But the key point there being you don't automatically have any rights to share anybody's, not even anybody, but any buildings name or likeness without that being specified within your contract. Even though you are shooting, you are literally the one turning the camera on. You don't have the right to let anybody else see any of that footage anywhere unless the client specifically signs off on it. And I do see this pop up with venues randomly as well, who for whatever reason don't want the venue included in anything commercialized. So just make sure that you have, again, look at your intellectual property provision, make sure that you know whether or not you've retained your copyright rights or assigned them. Make sure you have a portfolio and testimonial section and a crediting section. Question for you, if you don't mind. Have you had any clients ask you or put you on the spot about whether or not you're using AI, and then as a follow-up, how you're using AI to edit anything yet?
I have not had anybody reach out about AI. And there are so many tools that are coming out that are very crazy. Adobe just announced through Premiere that you can just type in, you can just tell it and it just will create video imagery for you that looks pretty real, just indistinguishable. But no, I haven't had anybody yet reach out to it. I am using AI for audio enhancing, some for graphic design when it comes to like, I'll export out frames from weddings and I can use AI now to up resolution them to be just as good as a photographer's image or better, higher quality there. And then I'm using the heck out of AI when it comes to ChatGPT and content for my blogs or my captions or things like that. But I haven't used it for video.
Yeah, it's obviously, this is something that has become like my number one question in the last 6 months, and especially in the wedding world. Clients are now asking the wedding professionals if they're using AI and how they're using it, because a lot of clients get worried that like, I don't know, personal information can get shared, and or you're not really doing your job and you're relying on a bot to do your job, etc. Lots more to dissect there, of course. But that being said, I've started including a provision in all of my contracts that is just an AI disclaimer. And it's something that I say you can put it in, you can take it out, but it's important for you as a professional to premeditate the fact that people are going to be asking you about that. And so whether or not you want to disclose that is up to you. I would recommend addressing it, but then I do include suggested language in there that states that the end product is still, you own the copyright rights to it. It is not created by AI, not conclusively created by AI. It's considered wholly human, which is the only wording right now that is the law has determined is necessary for copyright rights. But we don't want, that's where some people are getting sneaky with coming back and trying to get refunds from wedding professionals, because they say, well, you used AI to help you Photoshop, Uncle Bob sneezing behind us in this photo. And so therefore we don't know if if this actually did fit your creative style or the creative license that's specified in your contract. So we don't know if you actually are in breach of contract. And so therefore we might need half of the money back from the wedding. And that sounds like an asinine story, but that's the kind of people are always looking for pennies to pick up. And that's a conversation that's popping up a lot as of late.
Yeah. Speaking of that, without going into the weeds on too many details of different things that I've seen around. I see a lot. People will make work and they'll post it, and then somebody will take that information, repost it, take that video, or upload videos that maybe I've given via a raw footage or a hard drive, create something, put it out there, tag me in it, or like certain client contracts say that, working with this celebrity or that person, like if you're posting these videos, you need to tag me or, add me as a collaborator or whatever it is. What are your thoughts towards what we should be doing as wedding filmmakers to ensure that it's clear that we own the footage and that they need to do that? And if somebody breaches that and posts the video without tagging you and is unwilling to, or something like that, what steps would you take? Is it worth fighting? Maybe just a little bit on all that.
Yeah, it's obviously important to think about that before the situation occurs, not just because we should be thinking about it, but it's important to think about that because after it occurs, you've lost most of your leverage. So let's build that leverage in on the front end so that it doesn't have to be contentious on the back end. That's something that I would discuss very openly. I've actually had a client, she's a photographer, but I had a client who filmed a wedding that was televised. And then they showed like the different, still shots from the wedding afterwards. And the bride had put filters on all of the photos and had taken all of the credits of my client off of the photo. So it was very cringy to watch. In her case, as we discussed, it's not worth the reputational harm, and it's not worth the fight with a celebrity that has probably a small army of lawyers ready to just, put out any type of dispute. You can't retroactively go back and say, hey, can you go edit that? And you could, but it's going to be harder to say retroactively, can you edit that? Can you, make sure you include my crediting? That's a conversation that I would have. I would actually, John, this might be something I would want to tinker with your contract, but I would actually set it out in the contract, a specific paragraph that states what crediting rights you have, and that if the client is choosing in any format to share the content afterwards without crediting you, build it in so that they have to pay for the right to not be able to do so, and create a triggering event so that you automatically would be able to send an invoice under that contract if they did violate that after the fact. Be a little bit of tricky wording, but that's something that, again, if you have that specified in your contract, it carries a monetary value. So if people want the ability to share without crediting you, that's fine, but they need to pay you what that marketing cost would be. What's the marketing loss, in the same way that reserving the date on your calendar literally takes that same $25,000 away from you? Not sharing that piece of your portfolio should be usually a comparable amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've worked with clients, NDA clients, where you can't share work from them and they're paying you extra for it. I think that especially in a world with so many influencers that are trying to get as much exposure bucks to pay for their stuff, and we get emails all the time, hey, I have this big following, I'll share the video, that kind of thing. And in a world where there's so many like B-list or C-list celebrities with a couple 100,000 followers or something, for me on a business side of things, it's like really gauging. I like to have, like I had in my cancellation agreement, my termination agreement, I like to have played chess to say, I can do this because you've signed this, but I am showing grace here based on their reaction. If said company or person is like, I'm going to post this video because I'm famous and I know you can't do anything about it and I don't want to credit you. It's like, I would like to have had in my contract the triggering automatic invoice that would be sent and different things like that. And if they came back and said, hey, we didn't know this would be an invoice, it's like, oh, well, you can either tag me in this or you need to take it down. And the other side of that from the business side, and has nothing to do with the attorney law side of it, is like determining with your brand where you're at to say, is it worth it to fight this person so my name gets on that? Or do I want to make them happy? Which is a fine balance. If they're being a jerk to you, don't do that. But there's that side of it too.
Yeah, it feels inequitable. This is where it's like they go, read like 48 Laws of Power or something though. There's always a way to like finesse that negotiation. And people, we have to we have to think bigger than just looking at crediting. I know that is a big deal, but when it comes to, especially if you're working with like an actual like A-list celebrity or somebody that runs in that circle, it is literally a circle. And so you don't want to look like the petulant person who's nagging after the fact to get your name added to something, because there is unfortunately that reputational component. I did have a client recently who dealt with something like this though. And the father of the bride was an attorney actually. And so we actually did send an invoice on behalf of this client, and the father of the bride and other parties in the, like the wedding planner and other parties. I was representing a photographer in that case. Other parties involved in the wedding sent invoices as well, because they posted everything without sharing any information regarding, anybody working with the wedding. And he shot down every single one, but did not shoot down my client. And literally said that he could have if he wanted to, but he respected the fact that she had led with professionalism every single step of the way, and that her contract was strong. He knew that she'd had an attorney review it and draft it, and that he knew that it was equitable. And so they went ahead and did satisfy that. So it's doable. It's a matter of how much you have to lay those seeds of respect before you have to actually rely on them.
Yeah. And again, it's like, this episode is not to scare you if you're listening to this, but to say, hey, you've got to get out in front of these kinds of things. You need a solid contract. You need to be paying attention to what's happening in the world. Things are changing. AI exists now. So, I need to add that to my contract, and I'm going to email Paige after this and say, hey, look at my contract and let me know what else I need to do. And it's like an expense that I'm earmarking every year to stay on top of this, because again, not even so long ago, somebody wanted to cancel. And if I didn't have that in place, it would have cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And instead I've got, a ex-client that doesn't hate me, that can't say anything bad about me. I'm not going to say anything bad about them, and I'm safe. So I appreciate all that advice. I know we're running shorter on time, Paige, but I wanted to ask you, I know you have something pretty exciting that you're working on right now. I would love for you to kind of talk to me a little bit, whatever you would want to, about your new endeavor.
Well, thank you for asking that. And you probably notice that I, like, anytime you ask me about the shop or talking about contract templates, I kind of like literally choke up a little bit, not from emotion, but from utter frustration, because as I've been talking about, business in the last 3 years has changed, last 3 to 4 years has changed. And I don't think that even my current business model serves my people the way that it used to, because your clients are smarter and are thinking differently than they used to. They're just aware of more things that can go wrong. So I've been really, really discontent with this company for 3 or 4 years. And I finally got tired of listening to my own self complain about it last year. By the time this comes out, I have transformed the shop into an app. I've stripped down it's an AI generated app, only in that I've built out a GPT as well, where I've uploaded every negotiation I've ever encountered, my own playbook for negotiation. I've uploaded every single contract, I've saved every question we've received in the shop for 7 years and trained this GPT on that. So fun light reading there. But the contract building tool itself is literally my brain. So I have gone through every contract line by line, determined what each triggering event could be or is, determined every question that could be asked around that triggering event, every answer that I could legally or ethically ever provide somebody, rebuilt it, and then created an app where instead of downloading a document and you're sitting here listening to this, hopefully like writing down some of the words we've talked about, like non-transferable, limitation of liability, and things like that, created those triggering events so that the provisions that you have to have in order to be legal are in there. And you can go in at any time and you can edit your contract per client based on, you need to be dynamic. Your business is dynamic. Different clients are going to ask for different things. If one of your clients asks for the AI provision, for example, or asks if you're using AI, you can just go click the button and then it's included in there. So my goal, John, as much as I love our chats, my goal is that you're never going to need to speak to me again.
Yeah, that's
all sitting right there.
That would be a perfect world. Yeah, that'd be great. Now, I've seen the back end of all the effort that you've put into building this app and using the power of AI, but having AI pick your brain completely apart because it's no longer there. You're a shell of a human. It's all inside the computer now. I also am kidding. But that is so helpful. So as I understand and what I've seen is that within the app, I have a client that says, I want a non-disclosure agreement and I want the rights to all the footage. I can type in and make sure, okay, I've got my template and I want to make sure that I add those provisions. I can type in, raw footage, hit the button, and boom, the provision is added to the contract or the rights to the footage or whatever. Instead of, oh no, I don't know if my contract's up to date. I can literally search and ask that question and it will add that to my.
That's exactly right. And you don't have to wonder if you worded something correctly. That's what really precipitated this. A couple of things did, but one was I saw during COVID, I took on at least 120 contract disputes. I can't tell you how many inquiries, but took on that many. And I saw, I'm going to say 80% of those were people who had used my contracts and then over time, like edited them incorrectly, like literally just tried to do the right thing. And it's not, that's where I say I'm discontent with my business model because I'm providing the contracts I literally use, and you can still download them through this app as a template if you want to, but they're the contracts I use. They're strong. I go to court with them. But if you're not using them correctly, how effective are they actually? And that's the question. If I'm providing those to people that don't have a law degree, at what point is more just stupid and just document dumping on my clients? That's what I had to wrestle with. So we just went back and simplified it and made it just literally based on every triggering event that is necessary, which are about 950 per contract.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, that's it.
You're way smarter than me. That's helpful. You use your lawyer brain, which is twice the size of a regular brain, and you've put this together. And no, but for real, like it's so cool to see all the effort you've put into getting this. I know that it's not just like, I say a lot, to make something easy isn't easy. And you've poured into something that I haven't seen anywhere on the market and have adapted with your entrepreneurial mind and your brain, your business to say, this is what serves clients the best. So wedding filmmakers, if you don't have a contract or if you want to update your contract, where should they go to check this out? Should we just put a link in the show notes is there?
Yeah. So thank you for that. And what's interesting, I do have actual analysts like tracking, and we can't find competitor research for this. So this is something, because of that, I'm releasing it early. And this is something that I want like wedding professionals to build alongside me, meaning I'm releasing a V1 version early and letting it just be a gritty startup that is built off of customer feedback. So V1's launching at shopcreativelaw.com in June. V2, so V1 will just be all client agreements. V2 will be the rest of the contracts in the shop. So through this summer, you can find it at shopcreativelaw.com. I just filed 7 trademarks for the rest of it yesterday. So I'll share more about that once.
That sounds good.
I can.
Yeah. And we'll have you back on more more often than 3 years ago, or however long it's been. But if people have a question for you, if they're interested in learning more, what's the best way for them to, I know you don't want me to talk to you, but if somebody out there is like, has a question or wants to connect with you, your brand, where's the best place to reach out to you?
Yeah, important delineation there. So if anybody has a contract related question, they can reach me at hello@shopcreativelaw.com. And if I actually, even though we've been talking about contracts most of this conversation, I practice intellectual property law primarily and act as an outside general counsel for companies through my law firm, which is PaigeHulseLaw.com. So if you have an intellectual property or you want a general counsel on retainer, reach out to hello@PaigeHulse.com.
Well, we've got that. We'll put that in the show notes. Paige, you're awesome. It's so fun seeing you do what you do, and glad I can be your friend and talk about Taylor Swift albums with you. And I appreciate what you do for our community. Thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, Paige, for being on the podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for her new app and ways to get in touch with her. As a friendly reminder, as we're closing out this episode, if you need mentorship, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. Check that out. We've got some different options for you to have one-on-one calls with either myself or with Nick, and let us help you speed your business up, help you go further, faster in your business. Spaces are limited, so if you've been wanting to talk to one of us personally or see the value in taking that next step and getting that mentorship, head over to howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. That's it. That's all I have today. Until next time, we'll see you.